We've been talking about the indie promotion produce by Orange Crush of late because of the deal that it has struck with My AEW to sell a series of events that it's putting on. And two wrestlers in the WWE's ID program, Marcus Mathers and Chaz Starboy Hall, have been pulled from Produce's July 16th show in Jersey City because of WWE Evolve obligations. And Produce has not taken this kindly or quietly. First, they announced a pretty hard new policy. Quote, if you cancel an existing booking with Produce for another independent contractor gig that isn't a full-time contract, all future bookings will be terminated. Then some fans online questioned how Produce were handling the situation, whether it was completely fair. And promoter Adam Abdallah then posted a separate statement highlighting how wrestlers had been, in his words, conned into doing scab work through WWE ID. And just to put this, I think I need to read the full quote, really. And he said, just a note on yesterday. The point of my announcements was not to name and shame talent. It was to highlight the fact that they were promised the equivalent of a grant program and were conned into doing scab work. This should be widely understood. Produce exists to serve our fan base, but as an idea, also as an institutional critique that shines a light on practices that are designed to devalue talent. I'll take 1,000 bullets personally if it brings sunlight to things that will make folks think twice about screwing talent or the fans. This will always be the tone. If you want passive viewing, you've got plenty of options. And he separately took aim at WWE's logistics, asking why ID talent would be made to clear their schedules a full day ahead of Evolve tapings, which were only a 2-hour flight away when a wrestler booked on Raw can fly in. GCW boss Brett Lauderdale got involved, saying that there was zero chance this was anything to do with the My AEW tie-in because he has had talent pulled from his shows because of Evolve tapings. So a bit of a back and forth about all of this as well. And just background for anyone unfamiliar, WWE ID launched in 2024. The pitch is that it gives WWE selected indie wrestlers are given resources, some coaching, even a chance for an ID championship on the indie scene, and a potential pathway through Evolve and possibly NXT. These aren't full-time WWE contracts, so the wrestlers can continue to take indie bookings, but as we see, they occasionally will get yanked when WWE wants them. Mm-hmm. What do you make of all of this, Way?
So, it brings up a discussion about WWE ID as, I'd say, maybe a credible service or goal, for an independent wrestler to strive towards, versus what it actually offers, and certainly I really appreciate somebody like Orange Crush being so outspoken about it, just so that we can at least have the conversation. We can at least have the sort of like microscope put on it to be able to say, well, what exactly does it offer talents? I don't like. I think Brett Lauderdale is somebody who is also a voice that I think, has a lot of credibility attached to it. Like, I think authenticity is entirely the GCW brand. And I don't know if he would just mortgage that to defend WWE if he actually truly didn't believe what he was saying. But the introduction of My AEW now does represent an interesting potential dilemma for independent wrestling promotions that have their content on the service while at the same time employing WWE ID talent. When I looked at this Produce Wrestling lineup, one of my first reactions was noticing some WWE ID talents, and I felt it was significant that you'd have WWE ID talent appearing on an AEW streaming service essentially. I think whether or not that will actually happen, and whether or not MyAEW.com has any influence on WWE pulling talents, that will be seen as the relationship progresses, because we will run into this. In fact, I do wonder if Orange Crush at this point will be likely to book any WWE ID talents anymore. After going through an episode like this, I'm I'm guessing maybe not, but maybe another independent wrestling promotion would. And at that point, do we find out whether or not WWE would have any say about that? I mean, Lauderdale's argument is that there are actual Evolve tapings happening. And Orange Crush is saying, why would they pull talents out 24 hours ahead when we're only 2.5 hours away by flight or something like that? Lauderdale says they've done that to me too. He's saying, like, you know, meaning pull like talents out a day, 24 hours ahead, even though, like, you know, the destination they could have actually gotten to. So he could be telling the truth. We don't exactly know yet, but we will get further evidence as my AEW's relationship with these independent promotions continues. But I would love to know, you know, at least from other people who have gone through WWE ID, what their actual experience is, whether or not they actually deem it worthwhile, or whether it's just a thing to, well, prevent talent from signing with the competition.
Yeah, I can see both sides of this. I take Brett Lauderdale's position very seriously because, as you said, he's a very authentic and respected voice in the indie scene. But talents are being pulled. You know, I had a slightly deeper dive into this, and I think there was a whole slate of ID talent: Aaron Rourke, Veronica Haven. These are not household names, but Sloane Jacobs, Anya Rune, Lainey Luck were all pulled from indie shows for an Evolve taping in recent times. I believe it was back in June, so fairly recently. On the other hand, scab work is a very loaded term. I mean, it's usually taken to mean people who are breaking a strike to do work for people who are on a full-time contract. I don't know that Orange Crush is offering employment, full-time employment contracts to people. I mean, it feels... as I say, I don't want to get, without the deep knowledge, I don't want to take any sides here, but I can see both sides of the issue. And I think, like you said, Wade, time will really tell over whether this becomes a pattern and whether we see some indie talents giving up that WWE ID status and then what they've got to say about it, you know, as to the reasons why they gave it up. I think we'll have to see whether that happens.
Yeah, and what WWE ID actually produces as far as, you know, like pathways, you know, towards either NXT, I mean, Evolve, yes, but, you know, NXT proper and then the main roster proper. Like we've, you know, Jack Cartwheel, like, yeah, Sean Legacy, I guess, like, you know, I guess he was an ID guy. Jackson Drake, yeah, like those guys have like actually, you know, moved up.
Kendall Gray moved from Evolve, although I don't think she was ever an ID talent. I'd stand to be corrected on that, but she was certainly on Evolve as their champ. Okay. You know, there does seem to be somewhat of a pipeline there. I suppose you'd call it pre-developmental or something. I'm not sure. And if you're an indie wrestler, you've certainly got your eye on a bigger prize, I guess.
It's July on the Post Wrestling Cafe, and that means our extensive G1 coverage begins starting July 11th. We're going to have reviews of every single G1 card right up to and including the finals in the middle of August. Plus, Rewind Away takes a look at 2 episodes of Heels. We're also going to be going back to 2005 for a review of WrestleMania 21, and it is the start of our double shot episodes covering this season of Dark Side of the Ring. Plus, we are going to dive into the 3rd season of WWE Unreal. All that and so much more can be yours by signing up to the Post Wrestling Cafe. It gets you XL editions of Rewind to Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, Collision Course on a weekly basis, MCU later, and so much more.